Africa. So she's all getting ready to do that. So I'm holding the fort womanfully. So yes, I hope everybody is well and doing brilliantly. Great. I hope this is actually going live where I want it to. I probably ought to check that, shouldn't I, really? Oops, it's quite hard to do when you're faffing around, it turns out. Oh dear. So, the question we have on today is, how do we get our dogs to do what we want them to do? Because we know that, we talked last week, well, Barbara talked last week, who held the fort for me while my poor old mum was going to hospital. We talked last week about how we get our dogs to stop doing things that we don't want them to do. So by the same token, we also need to be able to think, well, if we know how to stop them doing whatever the thing is, how do we get them to do something else instead? Which is a great question. So, just trying to see, I pressed the wrong button. If we've got anybody here, super duper. So, and the answer is, it's all about thinking about motivation, and it's about thinking about motivation from a dog's perspective. So we're not looking at motivation from our own perspective. We might do things out of altruism. We might do things because we know it's the right thing to do. And the reason that we're like that, and those of you that are watching that might have kids, will know that kids are quite different. They don't necessarily think about things in quite the same way as we do when we're adults. And dogs are kind of the same, and it's for a very similar reason. So with humans, there's a part of the brain at the front, and it's called the prefrontal cortex. And that part of the brain is responsible for the kind of higher order thinking, that whether something's right or wrong, whether something is going to help other people, that kind of thing. And here's the thing, Katrina, hello, lovely to see you. Anybody else there want to say hello? And the thing with our dogs, and it's the same with humans, is that human children, that prefrontal cortex isn't developed in the same way. So we know with humans that the prefrontal cortex doesn't develop sufficiently until they're about 25. And that's where you tend to get with kids, particularly teenagers, more risk-taking behaviors and that kind of thing. Thank you, LJ. I feel fine now. I'm all good. Which is brilliant. So yeah, with dogs, I think it's about a third of the size of a human one. And what that tells us is that our dogs just don't really have that same kind of, what should we call it? They don't have that same moral compass that we have. So I've just found Barbara. This is brilliant. She's here. Yay, she's coming in. So they don't have those same morals that we have. They don't do things for moralistic reasons. They don't not do things for moralistic reasons. They do things, and this is something, I should probably wait till Barbara connects up for this bit, because it's something that Barbara says a lot, and that is that dogs do things that work. So did you just hear that, Barbara? No, you're on.
I didn't, sorry.
No, I was just quoting you.
Oh my goodness.
How we motivate our dogs. And I was just saying, our dogs don't really have that moral compass that we have. Dogs will do stuff because it works. And that's what you always say. Dogs do what works. And it's true. They do what works. And that's really interesting. because we need to consider that that's how they're thinking, that's how their brain's working. When we think about how are we going to motivate our dogs so that they do what we want. So yes, I've got slightly geeky, I'm afraid, Barbara. I couldn't help myself. I've just been talking about brains and prefrontal cortexes and things like that. But you got the summary of in the end of how I started off.
Jesus, how much did I miss?
Not a lot. That was it, really.
Awesome.
Oh, excuse me. So yeah. So when we're talking about, Barrett's just accidentally found the Rattler Live. Sarah's here as well. Hi, Sarah. So when we're looking at what we do want, so last time we talked about how do we stop our dogs from doing stuff, and that was find them an alternative behavior. How do we actually get them to do the things that we do want them to do? And we hear a lot, don't we, about people talking about, oh, my dog's really stubborn and those kind of things. And those are people that are struggling with this part. How do I actually get my my dog to do some stuff? So, I mean, what are your thoughts on stubbornness in dogs? I have many thoughts, as you can imagine.
Stubbornness in dogs. Well, the thing is, I mean, why would our dogs be stubborn?
Exactly.
What does stubborn even mean, right? It kind of normally what goes along with it is that he knows what he should do, or he knows he does wrong, or these. And I know that
it's making those choices, isn't it? It's deliberately making that choice that I'm just not going to do it, and that doesn't really compute particularly, does it? No, not doing it.
Yeah, I mean,
got to be a reason.
Yeah, so here's the thing. So either it's training, right? So we're asking our dogs a behavior that we've taught, let's do a hand target or a sit, and now the dog isn't doing it, right? He's looking at the other dog, or he's sniffing the ground or ignoring, oh, my dog's stubborn. But actually, the dog is just saying, I don't know what you want from me.
And that's the thing, isn't it? For me, there's two reasons. There's two reasons a dog doesn't do what we want. Either they don't know what we're asking them to do. They don't understand. Because of reasons which we'll talk about in a sec, or because they're not motivated to do it. And we need to think about, it's that thing, like we say, they do what works. Why would they want to do this? What's in it for them, really? So it's about motivation and it's about clarity.
I mean, if you have a dog, if your dog knows, okay, I see what you're saying. I'm trying to understand what's the difference. I mean, not
I'm kind of thinking
between motivation and understanding.
When you're growing a behavior.
Yeah, exactly, because you can't even create understanding without motivation.
Exactly.
Right? So but I mean, I could, if you never pay, or if you've stopped paying, people often ask, when can I stop giving treats? So if you stop paying, then the behavior will erode. So in other words, you might create a situation where it appears as if your dog is stubborn. You taught them, right? You had successful repetitions. Now you stop paying them. So now your dog has no longer motivated. They will do it a few times. But then if the history of non-payment outgrows the history of payment, then then they'll stop doing it because there's simply nothing in it for them.
Goes away. What's the point? We've
Or
got a couple of little comments as well.
Okay, I have to actually make a plan and see them.
Yeah, so Katrina said when we talk about stubborn, no such thing as that in dog language. And you're right, from the dog's perspective, no.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that. That's really well put. No such thing in dog language.
And I like what Sandy said as well. Archer is not stubborn. He's running his own program. And his own program is just a program where he's just like, I'm not quite sure what the deal is here. What am I supposed to do and what happens then? And that's all he's asking you. And we make it, We make it sound so simple there, don't we? I just made it sound like, oh, I just have to tell them clearly what to do. But actually, that's a real skill and that's really hard. And it depends on the environment. It depends on so many other things as to how we actually achieve that. So it is quite complex achieving that, really. And Bodhi's being good. Oh, Bodhi's optimism and confidence are growing. Lovely. Life is good. Oh, that makes me so happy. Yeah. So Sarah mixes up rewards, treats, sometimes toys, sometimes play. And that's huge, isn't it? I like having lots of different types of rewards. And different dogs, different things will be more rewarding than others. And something that could be rewarding for one dog might not be rewarding at all for the next dog. It all depends. So yes, that's something that's super important. So could anybody that's watching, could you pop in the comments in terms of motivation, so in terms of thinking about rewarding our dogs, what is super motivating for your dog? And it can be anything you like. So it doesn't have to be a bit of food or a treat. It could be a particular toy. It could be, I'll tell you in a minute what Dash's favorite reward is, which absolutely annoys me to heck. Could he not have picked a better top reward in his life? It's a good thing he's adorable. So Barrett plays Whippet, so that's on the kind of the long string where he's doing lots of chasing and that kind of thing. So that's an interesting question, Rebel, Sarah. So Rebel has a new love of toys because Rebel now has a little brother who's just turned 1, who is a poodle called Rudy. He's super handsome. So now Rudy wants the toys, Rebel wants them too. And she's finding that rewarding. That's interesting, isn't it? Lots of play, saying hi. Oh, Eljo likes some of these. And Katrina likes movement. Yeah. And that's Dash's thing. His favorite reward is me running along with him, which means I have to run in public.
He wants you to take up agility, clearly.
I know, I think he does. But he doesn't want to do it. He's far too wonky. Gosh, the injuries that dog would get. But yeah, no, he just wants me to run with him.
Okay, nice. I like it.
Oh, so annoying, so annoying. Hats is just a food kind of a girl. That's her thing. Lovely. So, should we get a little bit controversial?
I love it. Go for it.
Okay. You sometimes see people around the place and they say, I'm not going to reward my dog. I'm not going to give them treats. I'm not going to rely on treats or play or anything like that. Okay. I want my dog to do the thing just because I asked them to.
Why is that controversial? That's rubbish.
It is total nonsense. But, you know, have you ever seen those things like people that go, I'm sure we've all seen this, where, you know, they're walking around with their dog who is just in a total heel looking at them. They've not got any treats. They've not got any nothing. So how have they achieved that? Is it desirable? Etc. And my answer to that is generally look a little bit closer. There's usually some equipment involved that I wouldn't go near with a barge pole. You know, things like your prongs and your e-collars and those kind of things. And that's the other way to motivate a dog, isn't it? The motivation can come from them getting something beautiful and lovely that they adore, or the avoidance of pain or fear or intimidation or anything like that. So there are that 2 sides to the coin, and all dog training has to use one or the other. So if you're not using, and this was my point I wanted to get to, all the nice stuff like the treats and stuff, and like you said, Barbara, just keep that reward schedule going, even if it's very, you know, much slower in time. It still needs to be there, because the only other option is the nasty stuff that, you know, is unethical and unpleasant and not fair to our dogs. And I could carry on, but I won't.
Yeah. So then it's either that or people have a squeaky ball in the pocket,
There is that. There's the secret squeaky
right?
ball or the secret little bag of tuna or something really smelly in the pocket. That can happen
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
And I mean, but I also find the thing is, there's also a school of thought where they say no treats, no toys, just praise.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really understand the rationale here either, because
I
of
think that
course
comes.
praise.
I think that comes from there was a study. Can't remember what it was. I think it was in the 90s, which looked at um, brain activity patterns and pleasure receptors in the brain. And there were more pleasure receptors switched on when a dog was praised than when they were given food. But I don't think that helps us massively with training our dogs. Do you know what I mean? I mean, praise can be, yeah, it's hugely effective and it's really massively important, but it won't work just on its own because praise is often will have this effect because it's a predictor of something else.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. So
Exactly.
and
Mm.
also,
So
so here
I think that's the origin.
I managed to unintentionally build a really strong recall cue and
Yeah,
behavior, that's why it's strong, without, just with praise. And I suddenly discovered that every time I sneeze, now I comes running and he'll come running and he's like all over me, like, what is this? Right. And then I make a game of it in a way. I go like, oh yeah, did I worry you? I'm not dying, or thank you for checking on me, or something like that. But he would always get, I would always pet him, and because it was just so cute. I
exactly.
mean,
It's
there was a
lovely.
time before all the stuff with the leg and Falky and things. He'd be the only dog here with me in the study, and I sit at my desk and I sneeze, and suddenly I would have him on the lap, right? So it was, incredibly cute. And I've never consciously rewarded him with food or toys or anything. It was really just praise, and it was completely unintended. So I'm not saying it can't work. The problem is that every dog is different and every dog likes different things, and we want to be able to have a hierarchy of rewards. I hope I'm not jumping
Exactly.
ahead.
And targeting praise appropriately and doing it in an appropriate
Exactly.
way is
Yeah.
actually really hard, you
Oh
know?
yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, it
yeah,
can
yeah.
work for some things. So if you're walking your dog and they look at you and you can, give them attention and praise for giving you some attention, then they're going to do it more often. It worked great for things like that. But if I want a dog to, I don't know, do something a little more complex, it's going to be really hard because it's just that praise isn't directed and we don't always get it right with our dogs as to
Yeah.
exactly what they want or understand what they're
Yeah.
finding pleasurable.
I mean, how would you even load a marker just with praise?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's like really awkward. And the other side of the coin is that I often see when people first start out, first dog, or the first time, like formally training a dog, doesn't have to be the first dog. And, we're working on some simple behaviors or complex ones, whatever. But the dog is successful. So then they get the cookie and then they get cuddled.
Yeah.
Right? Like rubbed and like, oh, you're so smart, or well done, well done. And all you see is sometimes the dog is outright uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
because they're focused on problem solving, and now why am I going to get rubbed and all this stuff over the ears or whatever, But also is a lot of it creates a lot of noise. And especially when we're shaping, the dog's problem solving. So the only data points that
Really
he
good
has
point.
is this worked, okay? Like I got a marker and I got my reward, and this did not work. I did not get a marker, I did not get a reward. So I try and then
But you've
approximate.
interrupted the problem-solving
You
behavior, haven't you?
totally
If you put the
interrupt that
praise
whole
in,
problem.
so it's such a
Exactly.
good point. And
Exactly.
sometimes, like if I look at Dash, and Sarah's just put a comment on, and I'll come back to you in a second, Katrina, who's had some time with Ian Dunbar. You were talking about rewards. I've probably covered it now. But her dog, because I know Sarah and all her dogs, her dog Harvey and my dog Dash, they're really similar in that their life's work is just about making the humans happy. It's all they want. Dash, if he could just be a good boy, his life's work would be complete. It's all he wants to do in the world. But if I'm working on something where he's getting thinky and I do that, yay, clever, he's such a good boy. And that's what he loves. He likes all that kind of stuff. That's what's rewarding for him. He's gone. This brain gone. Brain gone. Some things where it's like upbeat stuff, where he's moving, losing lots of movement, that can work quite nicely. But for thinky stuff, you're right, forget it. I've interrupted. He was on a roll and I've spoiled it. Really
However,
great point.
after a couple of reps and
Mm.
marking and rewarding, marking and rewarding, marking and rewarding, hopefully, if you set it all up nicely in a thin layer so the dog can be really successful, then we do want to interrupt, right? Then we want strategically, and then we want to play, and then we want to rub the dog or do whatever they love and move around or tug with a toy or run a little bit, but not every single repetition.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that's what Katrina was saying that they were doing with mixing up the rewards was something they were talking about with Ian last week. And that's massive, isn't it? Sandy just was saying that she's got a new game where they're just using praise and clap, and that's so happy. So catching a ball, putting in a basket, and he enjoys doing it and the reaction. And if it's the right behavior and it's something that where the praise and the clapping and the happiness fits in with that behavior and then is motivating for them to repeat it, and then yeah, I like clapping as well for my dogs. They like that too. Yeah. And sometimes I do use it if, God forbid, I have run out of treats. Either that or they'll run away.
Yeah. So I love all this, and I love the mixing things up. And this mentioning here, Katrina is saying that Freya is very dependent on food until it doesn't motivate her. And that is why we need to mix it, a couple of reps, depending what it is, either with toy or an activity or or if it's something that needs more precision and we want to get more reps in, then it's easier, it's more efficient. You can do 3 reps of something in under a minute, 5 reps in under a minute, each time the dog got a piece of food. And then we go and we play. And then we come back again. You have to break it up because I always call it a cookie coma, right? If you give that, because arousal goes down.
It does, yeah. I love
and we
that.
want the dog to be just like us, I mean, when it's humans, I call it the Python syndrome, and I lie on there, I've eaten too much chili.
It's like after that, the holidays when you have all the big family meals and you're like...
Exactly. Everybody's just lying around digesting like a python who just swallowed this big thing.
But that's all to do with that parasympathetic nervous system, isn't it? So that's what's taken over. So the arousal.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry, people.
So now, no, it's good. So it's important to you want to have a repertoire and you want to be able to stack your rewards.
Yeah, so absolutely.
That's the other thing, right? Cookie. Yeah, that was really good, right? Then because that was a particularly good repetition. So we can really, it's not all the same. And then I love what LG wrote. Did you see this?
Yeah, I was just reading it now.
Yeah. So once a behavior is hardwired, I don't know if that, well, once a behavior is hardwired, praise is sometimes enough. For example, I don't always bring treats on walks anymore. Praise and release to sniff are enough to reward loose leash walking and listening to me. Also, drum roll, some training games have become rewards in themselves. So I love this, LG. I really love it because what you're talking about is a transfer of value,
Mhm.
right? The
Exactly.
motivator is not like, here is my carrot. Will you come and play with me? It's we want to transfer the value of whatever it is that the dog finds motivating and rewarding. We want to transfer that value into the behavior that we want them to do,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Dash is like that with him and Middle. Massively rewarding. He loves it. Oh, I got to do this. It's so exciting.
Yeah, but do you never ever reward him for?
No, I still sometimes do reward him for it. Absolutely. Yeah, I do. And I still keep that up.
Mm.
But I still sometimes reward for doing something, right? Let's finish, let's go into a middle. Yay, we did that. It was brilliant. And he's like, woohoo. So excited. Really cool. Really, really cool. Brilliant. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about when we're trying to get our dogs to do stuff. Clarity and motivation.
Yeah. All right.
Can we
So
just quickly talk about the first bit, actually, the clarity bit?
the what bit?
Clarity, how
Oh,
we make
clarity.
sure that they understand that they know and understand what we are asking them to do.
Okay, yeah.
Because that's something that can be really tricky, can't it? What would you say are kind of the key things to bear in mind to make sure you've got that understanding and that it's really clear what they are supposed to do?
You want to keep things really simple and split it in as many layers as possible, right?
Yeah.
Really small layers. You also, so there's a couple of things are playing. So that's number one. So whatever the behavior that you want to teach, you want to think what's all in it. You know, what is all involved. And you can even write that down. I mean, while you do something else, you have a cup of tea or, sit on the couch, looking out the window, whatever. You can have a notebook there and you can just write down all the splits. And the other thing is, so it's just as an example of what I mean, if you teach your dog to go to their bed, because that's actually a fairly simple one. So you want the dog on the bed and stay there. So then what's all involved? So there is the dog going to the bed, the dog is on the bed, and the dog leaves the bed. Right? And you could add in the dog is lying, the dog is sitting, perhaps. So those are other things. And then the next thing would be, how do you make it really clear for the dog to understand what they got the treat or the reward for? And then you can think about how can you manipulate the environment to make it easy for the dog to make the right choice. So then they get lots of value for the right choice. So really big blanket in a very small room, for example. And you want to make it really easy for the dog to realize what they've just done and got a cookie for. So we find that, for example, when you teach them to get in a bed and stay there, that if you have a bed that has obvious boundaries, so like a raised bed or it's got nice sides or something, it's much easier then for the dog to understand that they're not rewarded for a sit in front of you. Because here's the thing. So and then if people get obsessed with the dog has to sit, right? Then it's not so clear for the dog. Am I being rewarded for getting on the bed? Is it the place? Is it the thing I'm sitting on? Is it the position in relation to the person? Or is it that I'm actually got my butt on the ground and I sit? So you want to be able to make it really simple initially. Dog is just on the thing. And if they have to step up onto something, again, that's really clear. But you don't want to make it too high, because then it could be a barrier. So you can see, you want to really think that's manipulating the environment to make that really clear. And then things like distractions, which goes in the same, has to do with the manipulation of the environment. But once you have a behavior in a distraction-free environment, doesn't mean that your dog can do it like that anywhere and everywhere, right? Because generalization you know, initially for the dog, it's just in the living room, Colonel Mustard with a candlestick. You know, it's just that
I love
combination.
that.
It's just that combination. So you have to then start changing it up, doing it someplace else. Oh, same game. Okay, even here. Oh, yeah. Even in the bedroom, even in the kitchen, right?
Guess
And
what? It still works.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the cool thing is, as we then do that in different places, we're also building up that reward history. So the behavior becomes more and more valuable for the dog. And then we can start adding some distractions. And then the dog understands, oh, even when there's food on the ground, you still want me to get on the bed. Or there's a toy, I'm not supposed to grab the toy, or maybe the door is open, you know? So the more we do that, and in doing that, again, we're building the reward history and we create the clarity for the dog that no matter,
It's a win-win, really, isn't it?
yeah. And they start to learn that even when there are distracting things in the environment, I'm still being rewarded for this one. But
Exactly.
to get back to the rewards, that's why it's so important to understand what our dogs find rewarding, because very often what they find rewarding is also a distraction. So if you reward your dog with dry kibble and you put a steak out as a temptation, then 3 times hopping on the bed to earn a kibble.
It's not going to work. Wouldn't work for me. But it's another
Right?
thing,
So
that clarity. Something you see quite a lot is with recall, isn't it? Someone who recalls their dog and then asks for a sit before they'll give the reward. And for me, that's a classic example of the dog going, well, hang on, what am I getting the reward for? Am I getting the reward for coming back, or am I getting reward for the sit? And they're going to come down and say, well, I got the reward for the sit because that's the last thing that I did before I got the food. So having that sort of clarity. What about markers, marker words? What do you think about those? And then we can move on.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I am.
They're pain in the neck. Well, marker words are great because they give clarity, right?
Exactly, do.
So
If they're used well, they've got to be used well. And I think, your marker word, it's got to be like accurate and snappy. There's no point having, yeah, good boy, as your marker word. It's too woolly.
yeah, it also has to be neutral, right?
Yeah, and it's got to be.
Yeah, is not really what we mean by a marker. That's more praise.
Yeah,
Right?
it's more just a yes.
Yeah. So
So you did the right thing.
I've just been I mean, with Stevie, I've just been doing some foundations with markers, not as detailed as I would like to, but so the because this whole thing with the location specific
Yeah.
markers.
Yeah.
And so I trying to, and why I say it's a pain in the tonsils is because you've got to be on your toes, that you use them, or I have to be on my toes that I use them with clarity. So search for food that's on the ground, get it for a toy, cookie when I feed her, the cookie to the mouth. And then I have a new one now that I haven't taught the other dogs, and that is Napf. Do you have any German speakers? Do you have any German speakers on? Do you have any idea what Napf is? What it might be for? I'm really curious. Do you have any guess? Napf.
Not without asking Google.
Don't.
I'm more than happy to cheat, though. More than happy.
Anybody? Anybody? Napf. I love it. It's such a fun
It's
word.
a great word, though.
Napf.
La, 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 la.
No.
No, no, we're all bamboozled.
Enough. What do you mean, Kathleen? Enough? Napf. No,
It
it's not
should be
enough.
though, shouldn't it, Katrina?
It's some people use the word dish. It just means you can go to the bowl and eat what's in the bowl.
Ah,
Because
nice.
Napf is,
Yeah.
food bowl, Futternapf. Napf is and I was just like, oh, no, I'm not using the word bowl because I struggle a little bit with those vowels, like the O and the W, I might come out wrong. Bowl. Anyway, so I could have just chosen dish, but that didn't come to me. So I chose Napf. Poor John.
Much
He's like,
better.
what is that
Much
word
better.
you're saying? What must I say? So it's okay. You can just put
I
the
might
dog
use that too.
Napf. I like it because you can feel it. Anyway.
It's a very satisfying word to say. I think if you're watching, everyone should try and just say no. We've got some questions to answer
Yeah,
today.
let's do the questions. Yeah.
Could I quickly, I'd need your permission first though, Barbara, before just give people a little kind of sneaky preview of the thing we've got coming up in a couple of weeks' time.
A challenge.
Challenge.
Yeah, of course.
Because when you spoke about praising the dogs and cuddling them, and you see them, and they've got these faces, and they're like, ooh,
Yeah.
kind of made me think, actually, this is really relevant. Because the reason I wanted to talk about it was is because we're working on it at the moment, we're developing on the moment, and it's actually really exciting and it's going to be brilliant.
Super exciting.
I mean,
So much
even
fun
if
to
we
put
say so
together.
ourselves, it's going to be
Mm.
super
I
fun.
got some videos today.
Yes.
I got a tap out on video.
Yeah, perfect.
And I've been taking pictures of eyes.
I've been trying and they're just failing to take decent pictures of eyes, but that's another story. So yeah, we're looking at proper deep dive, in-depth, 3-day challenge, body language, looking at things that will be, I think every single person will learn something on this 3-day challenge, learn something new. Plus, we're going to be giving like practical activities to do and that kind of thing, learning to speak dog. I'm just
Yeah,
so
that's what it's going
excited
to be
about
called.
it.
Learning to speak dog.
Absolutely. It's going to be absolutely
Yeah,
brilliant.
I'm really
So
stoked about it.
really excited. So what will happen is we're sending some emails out over, I don't know, next week sometime, I think. Can't remember. We've put it there somewhere. So we'll send some emails out where you can sign up for the challenge. And we'll be doing some, we'll do lives each of the 3 days, and so you can ask lots of questions. It's
And
going to be
the cool, yeah. And what we were talking about, just wanted to mention is, Julia and I were talking about it. The thing with dog body language is that it's so personal.
It really is, isn't it?
Like individual, right? Every dog, they're not all they don't all talk the same, they have different dialects and different accents
different accents, yeah.
Yeah. And some are really strong accents and different body types and breed types and whatever. So the more ever since we started looking into it and deepening it, obviously for my own dogs, and I was just thinking about there's a bunch of stuff that I've learned about Noah, because of his injury and how traumatized he was, and then his reaction to, and with Falcon, the whole interaction, all of that. So I see him and I read him really well now, but Falky's signals aren't the same. I don't see the same
amazing,
behaviors
yeah.
when he's not enjoying something. So he's a whole other study, that I have to do. And anyway, so it's really super, super interesting.
So that's coming up. It would be a nice sort of, I've learned things, with research that we've done for it. So I'm, fairly confident everyone will learn stuff.
Yeah, no, everybody will learn something new.
It's going to be.
Who was it who said, once you've seen it, you can't unseen it? Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's the thing. All of a sudden, I see so much stuff and I wonder, because when when I was much younger, and my senior dog, he was a little, started to have a bit of dementia, and the two boys, they didn't always see they didn't like each other so well, and there's so much that I missed that I didn't see then.
Would have been
And
so
they had a
much
couple of,
easier.
we had a couple of fights, and and then it seemed to be like all of a sudden, right? Where did
Yeah.
that come from? But now I know, there's so much that I missed, so many expressions of how they felt. I mean, I can't remember. I don't have video of that, but I'm pretty sure because I see it now. And I also see that now it communicates a lot,
Yeah. They
which
do,
I
don't
didn't
they?
see before.
Yeah.
Chattering.
Anyway, that's
Yeah.
yet to come. Super exciting. Right. Shall I read out the first question from Amanda? So Amanda has a large reactive lurcher, lives with another large lurcher. They've read lots of different ideas about dog reactivity. Some say expose them to dogs slowly, one dog at a time, but others say do it in a large field with lots of dogs. He does wear a muzzle while out on a walk. They took him to as many dog shows as they could, introduced him to lots of dogs. They could, but he still turned into an idiot hound. He was okay in dog training classes, but as soon as he walked out the door, he took offense to any dog coming near him. That's such a common story, isn't it? Doesn't help that the trainer threw a chain lead near his feet to snap him out of it. He then didn't like anyone wearing camouflage. You've seen the behaviourists, but they want to work on other bigger issues before the dog issue, like trying to deal with people wearing camouflage and trigger stacking. He reacts to lots and lots of different things. There's been some improvement, but things set him back. So what are our thoughts on exposing him to lots of dogs or not? Should we do that? And will my redirecting of his actions, either i.e. sitting or down, and the subsequent treats eventually replace his fear-driven reactivity? This is a really big question. So
here's the thing. If we know that the dog, the dog is fearful. We know the dog is fearful. She says it's fear-driven reactivity. We know the camouflage. Chain lead, he got a major fright there. Okay, so I mean, but it doesn't really matter whether fear or not. I just want to say it is fear, okay? And think of something that you're afraid of. What makes you feel better? Is it being near that thing that's scary? Or is it not rather feelings of safety and confidence?
I always think that for this,
better.
thinking of something like a fear of spiders or snakes.
Yeah, so what do we do with somebody?
If you were in a big room full of them, or if they were far away?
Yeah, right?
Because it makes it really clear when you think of it in that context, doesn't it?
Yeah. So there's a lot of bad information around, and I think what really helps is if we just take it, turn it around, think, how would I feel? Because Julia, you are expert on the brain here. But
I mean, it's a thing
it's a
called
mammal
flooding,
brain,
isn't it?
right? I mean, the way the neurological responses, all the stuff that goes on in the body of the dog is not that different from what goes on. It's not different from what goes on in our own.
Yeah, for that very sort of visceral, basic, this is all basic stuff. This is all the dog being in that fight or flight and all that kind of stuff. This is the ancient part of the brain. This isn't your sophisticated prefrontal cortex. This is the more ancient, basic stuff.
That's where all that takes place.
Yeah. And this kind of idea of exposing, your dog to lots of other dogs, it's a technique called flooding. And what sometimes people observe is if you do that, the dog will stop for long enough, the dog will start reacting. which they probably will. But the reason for that is not because the reactivity or the fearfulness or the emotion has disappeared. It's because the dog is that scared and nobody is helping it and feels that unsafe that it gives up and thinks this absolutely, I am not safe here. I don't have any trust in this person because I'm telling them how unsafe I feel and I'm being ignored. So there's therefore no point in me telling them anymore. So you end up with what Hattie was when I first had her, which is a totally shut down dog.
So
which sometimes for me is more convenient, but it's not very kind.
Yeah. So the final question here is, should he be taken to that dog show? Will my redirecting of his actions, sitting or down, and the subsequent treats eventually replace his fear-driven reactivity? Maybe, yeah, could, absolutely.
I like this part of the question because it's got quite a lot of nuance in it, hasn't it, really?
Yeah. So redirecting, but the thing is, you actually want to get in before the reaction happens. And that is why it's difficult to take him to a dog show and expose him to a bunch of dogs. Also, so for some dogs, it's very different to see a whole lot of dogs. It's very different from seeing 1 or 2 dogs on a walk. Keeping that in mind, right? What you want to do is you want to build it, help the dog feel really confident. You want to change how he feels about seeing another dog in the context where it bothers you. And you want to make sure that's part of the confidence building is that your dog always feels safe. And the moment they overreact, I'm not sure if what's the description of what the dog does. So I don't know. I assume there's barking and lunging and jumping and stuff. Maybe he tries to hide. I'm not quite sure what his reactive behavior is, but it doesn't matter because it just is an expression of how the dog feels in that moment, and that is crap. He feels really shitty, right? So what we want is we want to help the dog feel better, and we cannot make him help feel better by making him feel bad. We want him to feel safe. So you want to take it back a notch and do confidence building exercises. Always, always make sure that everything health-wise is fine, of course. And nutrition helps a lot. So this is all the sort of background stuff, health and nutrition. Then we want to make sure that the dog gets enough sleep, right? That's a really big part. Lots of sleep and rest and decompressing at home. No running around, if they're constantly doing things and guarding the windows and whatever, none of that. We want them to be really nice and quiet at home. And then we can start thinking about changing how they feel in the presence of dogs. And that is when things like sits, downs, easy tricks, hand targets, doing those things with a dog in the far distance, and your dog can happily focus on you and earn a reward. That's where we want to start.
And that's the thing, isn't it? When they're in that reactive frame of mind, it's too late. They can't learn anything. Yeah, so putting them in that situation is utterly pointless. You're not going to be able to achieve anything to change the behavior longer term. So like Barbara said, you need to keep them so that they're not over that threshold, and then work on all these other great things.
You still want to redirect when it happens. None of us are perfect, right? You still want to redirect, and you want to move away, and you do want to feed him because you want him to feel better, but the learning happens at the safe distance where the dog can still oh yeah, let me
just be careful with your individual dog. If he is stressed and having a reaction, for some dogs they won't take food anymore. So if he's not keen to take the food and he kind of does that, don't be trying to make him have it, because that can feel punishing to some dogs to do that. So just know your own dog.
And incidentally, Amanda, you said the behaviorist wants to work on trigger stacking, and trigger stacking is a biggie.
Huge. I'm
Mm.
going to talk about
So
that next week, actually, aren't I? When you're not.
yeah, exactly. So stay tuned for that. So and part of helping the trigger stacking is to make sure the dog feels super safe at home, has lots of calm time at home and lots of sleep, because that helps balance, or the opposite side of that, lots of playing with the other lurcher, running outside every time there's a noise. I'm just making this up. I don't know if maybe your dog is just like a total couch potato at home. That's great, right? But for the sake of others also. So if that's happening at home a lot, running out, coming back inside. Oh, something happened. Got to check the door. Those are all things that contribute to the trigger stacking, and then the reaction when they see another dog will be more
It's
likely.
all linked in. It's all part of the same issue.
Yeah, and very often we have more control over the smaller other triggers that stack up than we have over other dogs. So doing something there, if you hop into the reactivity reset, there's a talk in there on a talk. We have I forget now, was it the second day? Man, it was last year, so I can't remember.
Blimey, I've slept
But there
since
is a
then.
thing on candles and triggers and the trigger stacking, and you might find that helpful to have a look at.
Worth a look, isn't it?
Yeah.
What else have we got?
I hope that's helpful, Amanda. Let us know.
Yeah, we've got another couple of questions.
Oh yeah, Leslie's asking, does using doggy daycare, I'm in the US, early in life help a puppy or a young adult dog get along with other dogs as they grow to adulthood?
Great question.
It's a great question.
Really, really good question. And the answer is very much.
The answer is what?
Possibly sometimes with some dogs in some daycares. You've got to be
It
really,
totally
really careful.
depends. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally
totally.
depends.
You've got to be so careful. The sorts of things that it can be issues in daycares is particularly for young dogs and puppies is that them not having enough sleep and not having enough quiet downtime away for everything else. So what then happens is you end up with all these super overtired dogs getting super grouchy with each other, and that can be an absolute disaster. And not allowing them to have enough sleep is not great for the dog's brains either. So that's really important. And another thing that is huge is how controlled is it just there are some daycares where all the dogs are just chucked out into a field and left to their own devices pretty much, and that can be disastrous because if there are any bad experiences, firstly, when you've got many dogs, they can escalate quite quickly, but secondly, particularly when you've got a younger dog, if that dog has a bad experience now, that will far outweigh their behavior and their attitude to other dogs than 100 great experiences. That it's that negative bias. The negative experiences are much more influential than the positive ones. So you need to know that your dog is being guarded against those negative experiences.
Yeah. So if there are some, whatever doggy daycare you're considering, I would go visit, I would speak to them, voice your concerns, and then see what your heart says.
Yeah.
Right? If it's really good, they're not gonna if somebody just tells you not to worry, this is the best thing, the dogs get so much exposure, blah 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 blah. If they don't speak, if they're not able to answer questions regarding those concerns, then I would stay away. But there are some good, there are
There are
definitely
some
good.
really good ones out there, but you've got to get a good one.
Yeah. So see who the people are, go and see, ask if you can hang around and see what's going on,
Ask where the dogs rest. That's
and whether they get any rest. Yes.
Yeah.
So really good. I mean, lots of places have scheduled rest time, right? Some even play you know, quiet music, and all the dogs go into kennels or have dog beds in small groups or whatever, but they need rest time. They can't just be playing all day long.
Yeah. Hope that helps. Okay, and Melissa they're getting ready to have family over for several days. Odin is a wild, excited dog when people are over, with a lot more barking than normal. Thankfully, all the people like dogs, but it's a lot to manage. He gets, they usually only give him anti-anxiety medications for the vets, but they're thinking they're going to give it to him in this case, considering his history. Is there any other advice that we could give to Melissa about having family over if you've got an overexcited dog? And I
Okay,
hear you totally, it's hard.
yeah, so whether or not the dog needs meds, we can't say anything about that. That's between you and the vet or a veterinary behaviorist. It's not, you know, I don't think that there is a taboo about it. You have to establish what's best for your dog. Now, that aside, things that you can do, I have a super high arousal blah dog when people come. And it's been a bit of a struggle to figure out what works best. But for us, what works best is number one, making sure that there is lots of management. So when the people, first of all, I find that if visitors stay for a few days, every day becomes, it gets calmer, right? When they come in and they see them, it normalizes more and more. It's initially a big deal. And so being able to manage your dog, put them behind the barrier or even in a separate room with something yummy. This is not lock away. This is for them to, you don't have to be quite so excited right now. You can rest now. Sometimes it's easier to have them there and then come out when the people have arrived. This, for my dog, that didn't really work because he would go wild. You know, the frustration of not being able to get to the people made everything then worse. So ultimately for us, what really helped was chew bones, really valuable, you know, safe but really high value chews. And then a lot of the energy was taken out on a lot of that arousal was taken out on the chew bones. So and then on top of, you know, so I would go at it from the different angles. So what kind of management can you have in place that the dog is not always there and getting higher and higher, running increases, yeah, running and jumping, access to the people, that sort of thing. And then, so either behind the barrier or in a different room with something calming to do, like a licky mat or, you know, or a topple or something. If that's not an option, or in addition, when they come out to see the people should ignore them as much as possible. So you want to keep all the excitement pretty low. Often with people who love dogs, it can be, I mean, it's better for us, but it can also make the whole excitement level can rise because of that, right? So having them ignore them, you know, until, so not in the way that they stand there, the dog is jumping around and they're just turning their backs, and because again, depending on the dog, it can create frustration again. So you've got to, everything, you have to see what works best. A nice bed behavior. I mean, if your dog knows to go onto a bed and hang out there, the chew bone can help them stay there. If you can, for some dogs, if you can set up an X pen so they can be in the same room on a bed with that chew bone, but they can't actually access the people and work themselves into a frenzy. Those are all things that really help, that have helped me with my dogs. And always to remember that action, activity, running, jumping, any of the movement and so on, that increases the arousal. Anything that increases more frustration will increase the stress and the arousal and make everything in the barking, everything will get worse. And food lowers arousal. So anything that is sort of on the end part of that praise sequence. I think we talked about the praise sequence in our live weeks and weeks ago. So anything that is about consuming, dissecting, consuming, licking, those that helps the dog to slow down and calm down and eventually feel quite relaxed. So preparing, having lots of that available, planning it, and then structuring the time if you have people staying with you for long, that the dog is not always running around free with the people.
Yeah.
If it is a multi-day visit, yeah.
Now, before we finish, I just wanted to quickly respond to Laura, who put on our post about what's on your mind with your dog. And she wrote, honestly, I think I need to do more for them. They do sleep a lot, but I worry that's because they're bored. And I really felt for Laura then, because I thought, you're feeling bad. And I don't want you to feel bad, because I'm sure you're the most amazing owner for your dog. And actually, dogs sleeping a lot is a good thing.
Dogs that are bored get into mischief.
Absolutely.
Dogs that lacking exercise, engagement, and brain games and whatnot, they will look for stuff to do. So your dog's lying around like couch potatoes is a good sign. They're feeling safe. They're quite happy, right? That doesn't mean that we don't want you to do more with your dogs. So what I would like to take that conversation a little bit further. Why aren't you? What's in the way? Let's talk about that, because I'm sure there's many others that feel similar. And then we can maybe address that with some tips. Is it lack of time? Is it lack of knowing what to do? Is it shitty weather? Is it because they're reactive and you can't go out? Whatever, right? Just share.
Yeah, be lovely. Pop a post
if it's lack of time, I so relate. So please don't be shy, people.
Too.
Don't be shy, right? Whatever it is, don't judge. We're here to help you problem solve it.
Yeah.
There was one comment though with a question thing. Hang on. From there's lots of good comments, but no, I don't find the one that I was referring to. It was something about CER. Food.
Oh, there wasn't there? Was it from Katrina?
No, I don't think it was Katrina. Katrina made some, while you're looking for it.
This one, Kathleen.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things is using rewards when I'm trying to help my dog change his CER to a trigger, and he finds it more rewarding to continue performing his conditioned response. I've tried using distance to ratchet back the intensity, but his reactions continue to be inconsistent and dependent on a variety of factors. Some would argue that full food rewards should not come into play at all in CER training. What do you think?
So I'm not entirely sure what the conditioned response is.
It could be barking. So, it could be anything, I suppose. Reactive behavior.
So if the dog, assuming that your dog likes food, if they're choosing to continue to bark and don't want to take the food, they're just over threshold.
Yeah.
And we can't condition a positive emotional response to anything if the dog is over the threshold.
Exactly. And it seems to me from what you're saying, Kathleen, is you're ratcheting it back, which is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You're still getting some inconsistent reactivity. And for that, the key is going to be learning to read your dog, and when they're in the right headspace, that you're going to be able to work on changing that conditioned emotional response.
Yeah.
So, guess what?
We have a
Our 3-day challenge is going to be right up your street, right up your street, because it's going, as I say, into that nuance, into those
being
little
really able
things
to
that
read it.
will be
And
huge.
absolutely. And then also next week's topic of trigger stacking, because the inconsistency can totally be because of what else is happening on the dog's day and so on, right? So the same brown dog is not always the same brown, well, it is always the same brown dog, but that, you know, because of what else has happened before, your dog might react stronger, sooner, closer, further away, whatever, you know, that inconsistency could be that. And then as to the use of food, food is a primary reinforcer.
Yes.
So if we want to change the dog's emotion, you know, if we want to create a positive association, food's the thing. However, depending, just like what we talked earlier in other training scenarios, toy play can also have, you know, sometimes it really helps a dog when they are fearful, when we can change their physiology. Susan Garrett talks about this quite a lot. So, but again, it depends on your dog. It depends on the situation. It depends on what works, how good you are at playing and reading your dog. You can also, that can also backfire, and then also getting your dog to tug with you when there's another dog, you know, it can, so we have to be really strategic and careful. But for example, using it just like in training for balance breaks is definitely useful. And I'm really fortunate, my puppy Stevie now, she loves toy play. She still also loves food, luckily, but I can really see how helpful it is when something scary happens. You know, she's quite ready to easily, can easily, not always, of course, she's not a robot, but she can, very often, she can easily engage in a game. And I know then that she feels better. So it is helpful sometimes. But just to reiterate that, food's the thing, because food's the primary reinforcer. Food also brings arousal down. Arousal, you know, when a dog is in a stress situation, arousal always plays in. So yeah, but the dog has to be able to take the food, and that means we have to keep them below threshold.
Super. I think that'll do for this week, don't you? We've done good.
It's been fun. I forgot for the moment that we're packing.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad you forgot.
Yeah. Thanks for that, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Looking forward to seeing you all in the challenge, because that's going to be the coolest. But I'll see you guys next week.
It's going to be fun. Yeah, and then next week. Exactly.
See you then, people.
Tschüss.